Today I'm going to talk about my favorite mechanism in Lucidity, Six-Sided Nightmares by Shannon Kelly. I backed this on Kickstarter a while ago. I got it recently, and I finally got it to the table a couple days ago. And I'm guessing most people haven't heard of this game or don't know much about the game, so I'll give you the basic rundown of what you're doing in the game. It's a push-your-luck game where you are going to sleep. You are dreaming. Dreams are represented by these dice that I'll talk about more in a minute. And you're placing those dice on this mat. And you're basically trying to get points and trying not to become a nightmare and not to die. There's a certain side of the dice that will slowly it hunts you, and I think it represents death. But yeah, you're basically just trying to fill this mat right here with dice, or specifically this part of the mat with dice. The game is a push your luck game and it has dice, so there's a lot of randomness in the game. However, I think the game does some really interesting things to mitigate that luck. And actually, before I get to that, I wanted to mention one clever little design touch. So they have a box lid, as you will in a board game, and I think they expect that maybe you're rolling the dice in this box, not necessarily, but it's there. But they put an FAQ in the base of the box. I really, really like that little touch because you're not going to miss that. You're going to have the box on the table. It's going to be there, especially if you're rolling dice in it. Really nice design touch. Anyway, so game with push your luck, randomness. So how do you give players some control over that randomness in a game where you're rolling dice? And the game does a few different things. The first is, at the beginning of your turn, when you go to sleep, see these tracks right here, you're going to pick one of these tracks. Each one is a track of 3, and you're going to put a little token on the front of it. And that tells you how many dice you are going to roll on the first part of your turn. So if I want to live on the edge, I can go all the way over here and roll 5 dice. And then during that turn, if I want to do another phase of that turn, you kind of get multiple turns within a turn, you can do it again, but you got to move the token over and you'd roll 7 dice and then 9 dice. Or you can go the other direction, just roll, you go down here to the other track and start with fewer dice. So it's giving players control over how many dice they want to roll, because the more dice you roll, the greater the risk that you will run into trouble, that you'll become a nightmare, that you'll be hunted. So it's giving you some control before you know any other information. You get some control over how many dice to roll. That's step 1. The next step is that you draw that number of dice out of the bag. You'll draw a bunch of dice. I'll show you a bunch of them. You're never going to get this many. But you draw a bunch of these dice, the little custom dice. They're beautiful. You draw them out of the bag. And this is where the really cool thing happens. You have to return 2 dice to the bag. Always. Always return 2. And so this gives you, and you haven't rolled them yet, you've just drawn them. So say I selected the middle track, I select 4 dice, and see how I drew a bunch of yellows and a red. I might look at my current state on the board and see that, hey, I'm getting pretty close to becoming a red nightmare. I better return that red die to the bag, and I have to return 1 more, so I'll return a yellow, so I just will roll 2 yellow dice. It gives you control over those dice because it is a random dice draw. Of course, the game could have just let you pick the dice colors, but that would have taken away some of the variability and some of the push your luck elements of the game. So random draw, but you get to choose which dice you return. Finally, you roll the dice, and this is where no choices are remaining for you, because when you roll the dice, whatever comes up on the faces of the dice, you must place them in the corresponding space on your map. So all of the agency and the choice in this game leads up to that moment where you roll the dice and lose all control, which I think this is a very intentional design choice. I like that the designer clearly thought about this and thought about, where do I want to give players control? Where do I not want to give players control? I think they did that in some really interesting ways. Plus, it's very satisfying to reach into a giant bag of dice and draw some and then roll them, especially custom dice. I think that's very, very satisfying, and I like the way that Shannon added some agency to that process. If you have a favorite mechanism in Lucidity or any other push your luck game where you give players some amount of agency and choice at the right time, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Thanks.